I've seen spiderwort sold in garden centers at a really hefty price, but I don't get it. For me, spiderwort is a weed. It grows, takes over a complete area, and I gotta dig it out because it's going to strangle the little leaf linden tree I have growing here. Spiderwort is tough to get rid of. I've had these plants here now for 5 or 6 years now. I keep digging them up and they keep coming back. You kill one and 10 come to the funeral. So the spiderwort though, it gets these big mop head roots on them. And if you don't get every last little bit, just like a dandelion, they'll continue to spread and grow. So I've got this cage right here that has my little leaf linden tree in, and I want that to be dominant here. The little leaf linden has a gorgeous scent when it's older and in flower. I first saw it when I was in Vermont at their eco center up in Burlington, and I couldn't figure out what the hell that smell was in the air. And turns out they have a whole grove of little leaf linden growing there. So Mrs. Rugged Homestead loves fragrant plants, shrubs, trees. So I bought her one last year, planted it, and it's starting to take off now. But the spiderwort is growing rampant over here, so I got to get it out of there. Not to mention my wild rose bush. I think that's the rosa, rugosa, or something like that. And it also spreads like a weed. Looks beautiful when it's in bloom, and it's covered in buds right now, so it should look nice in a few weeks. I hacked it back because it was spreading all over the place, so I really narrowed it down. Now it's getting ready to bloom, but it too is encroaching on the linden tree, so I'm gonna have to cut it back around the tree and get rid of the spiderwort. In a container setting, the spiderwort is probably a really nice plant to have, but I really can't let it roam free like this, because one plant will produce a dozen within a year, and then each of those plants will produce a dozen more, and it becomes a mess. So I'm going to start digging up these plants. Now the problem is I've got rocks here. This was originally a rock garden. It's a spit of land between two driveways. So I'd made a rock garden out of it before I'd converted over to a back to Eden method of gardening. So now all the rocks are covered with wood chips, so it's kind of tough to know where they are. But we're going to try and get these up. And they fill into any crevice they can find. Well, that's not good, because that means I just broke off a root in there. Doesn't look like I'm getting down to the roots here. Maybe somewhat. So this is the root, and this is only one plant, so it's not too bad. But when they grow in tight clumps, these things they'll spread out like this, and they'll all be like the spaghetti here. Yeah, but these are the roots here, again. And again, if you leave a part of this in the ground, it'll grow. And that's why I can't understand how they charge so much for a spiderwort plant at a nursery. Like I said, I view these things as weeds. And we're getting to that mop head look of the root system now. I've got a few more up top here now. They'll work to get out, and when I'm done I'll come back. Yeah, I got one of those big clumps out, and again, just showing you the shape of that root system. I've removed most of the spiderwort from here. I still have a few more here, but that's up into this rose shrub. So what I'm going to do now is to start cutting that back. This is actually new growth right here from where I cut it last year. You know, even though it's got some buds back here on the flowers, I mean on the stems, I'm still gonna cut it back to make sure that the little leaf linden, and I'll give you a closer look at what that looks like right now. So I'm going to give it a little bit more room, but this thing forms almost like by strawberries. Like strawberries, they runners, these branches will fall out, and wherever they touch the ground, they root. So I gotta cut them out, dig them up, do that down here as well, and then basically just shave it back a little bit. I mean, there's still plenty of shrub here to grow, and cut this thing back because it's like a wild branch just growing out here. So do a little bit of trimming on it and see if I can get that contained now. I just plan on using head shears here. I think the harder you hack at this rose bush, the better it likes it. And I do recommend wearing gloves because you can get cuts all over your hand from this thing. Obviously I don't listen to my own advice. That was my father's motto, do as I say, not as I do. So we've opened it up enough, and I will come back with gloves and pick up the trimmings, and that should be enough right now to give the linden tree plenty of airflow through there, and hopefully in a couple of years it'll have some nice flowers on it, some nice fragrant flowers. But I'm gonna have to, you know, continually monitor this because I didn't get all of the spiderwort roots out of here, and there's still the roots from the rose bush as well in here, so they'll start to sprout again next year. But just keep at it, cutting it back, and it'll eventually die back on its own. The really interesting thing about this rose bush is that we got it from the other side of our garage back when we first moved in here, like 12 years ago. And without exaggeration, this plant here grew from a cutting that was about that long. And I'm not exaggerating. We had dug it. This had actually been planted on the other side, but it was like really scraggly because it was heavily shaded over there. So we had dug it up, and my wife wanted it to just to stick it in the ground, so she stuck it in the ground over here. And over the years, it has taken off. You can see it's spread over here as well, and it's down here too. So it takes a lot of maintenance on this shrub to keep it in check. And underneath here is the remnants of an old cherry tree. It was a black cherry, And it was a gorgeous tree when I moved in, but it was rotted at the heart. And ended up having to cut it down. And it was like hollow in the center. It was so rotted out. So we ended up planting the rose shrub, the rose twig, on the at the edge of the stump that was underneath there, and it's grown magnificently since then. Again, from about a 6-inch long scraggly piece of vine on it, it's come into a nice little shrub. Pain in the ass at times, but nice nonetheless.